men really should be fit, as close as I can to give someone a moral obligation to be fit. In 2018 to 2019, Australia spent approximately $24 billion on potentially preventable lifestyle-related disease. It's one of those things where it can be remarkably simple, but due to our own baggage and stuff, it's definitely not easy.
Mr. Ryan.
How you doing?
Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah.
How you been, man?
Okay. It's been an interesting couple of weeks for me, trying to take steps forward, more or less. But we're going to get more to that in episode 6. So we'll do that. So today, fitness.
This is definitely your area of expertise. I will have on what you do. I'm keen for this one because I think it's a good follow-on from the last episode where we talked about confidence, and that's a very big topic. Go check that out if you haven't seen it. You shared a lot of great stuff in that episode, by the way. There was a lot in that episode. But this is a good natural progression from that one, I think, because the way I see it, fitness and health is something that is very easy. It's an easy first step for people to take, I think. It's a lot of measurable things. I'm keen to unpack this because I reckon you've got a lot of thoughts on it. But okay, let's just jump into it.
Cool. So, my first thought would be, if I'm being really picky and precise in my language, I would say fitness starting out is simple more than easy, because starting to get fit requires some degree of discomfort, both in terms of doing the thing, because doing exercise to a sufficient intensity to really get a result is at least mildly uncomfortable, so it's not pleasant. But there's also the element of it's just not easy to push yourself to do new behaviors. So, for example, like at the moment, I'm really into Alfred Adler. He was like a psychologist from like the late 1800s to the early 1900s. So I've got 3 of his books in the last week, and I'm reading one of them. And one of the, in like the introduction, he says something to the effect of, the hardest thing paraphrase, but this is close, the hardest thing for any man to do is to be aware of and to change himself. Which is like, yep, that's completely true. But being self-aware and then doing something about changing yourself. So when I work with people, what is the biggest issue that they have? It's motivation. It's consistency. Every time. So not easy. It's simple for you to get started. But I appreciate that it is not a easy thing for people to get started with. And I want to make that really clear for people, because some people make it sound like, just getting fit it's one of those things where it can be remarkably simple, but due to our own baggage and stuff, it's definitely not easy.
There's a lot of resistance that people can run into early on, right?
Yeah, there's resistance from within, there's resistance from without, there's contextual factors, family, friends, work, time, stress, energy. There's so many different factors.
I wonder if maybe a good starting point then is to maybe give a clear definition on what you would say fitness is.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a generally sort of big can of worms. I think when I'm talking to people, the term I have come up with, I'm sure someone else has come up with it too, but the term I like to use is physical competency. At the very least, I mainly talk to men, so we'll say men. Yep. Men should be physically competent, which means you should have a body that can relatively comfortably handle the physical demands of life without you really getting too bogged down in it. Yep. So you should be able to roughhouse with your kids or run around and play with your mates, depending on your age. Intimacy with your wife should not be overly exhausting, unless you're doing a good job, in which case, good for you. Good for you if you can get to that level. Fantastic, right? Helping a friend move, doing the garden, renovating shit. Like the day-to-day tasks should be relatively straightforward for your body to do. Physical competency. So it's like a base level of cardiovascular fitness, and people will be like, oh, what is that? Is that being able to run a 5K, or is that being able... I don't really have a set, like you need to be able to bench, squat, run this amount. I think I like fitness being once you get into the groove of being a lifestyle, you do this to the day you die. And so you always want to carry it on the stick. Just are you getting better? People know when they get to a stage, they're like, yeah, I know I'm fit. Yeah. Like currently I can't run a 5K. I need new runners to begin with, but I've never really been huge on running. But I know I'm still physically fit. My blood work is like always pretty much perfect. I lift weights 4 days a week. I do jiu-jitsu 2 or 3 other days a week. I try and get my 10,000 steps up every day. So while I'm not fit for running, I'm generally physically, I can do most things. I can rock climb and do all that shit, and it doesn't really wear me out.
You can walk up a flight of stairs and it doesn't.
Yeah, I can run up the flight of stairs. It doesn't bother me. Yeah, so that's sort of how I define fitness. I really try and point people more to the journey than the destination, because once you've hit a destination and you're like, oh, what's next? That's when people fall off. So, yeah, long-winded way of answering, but hopefully that does it.
So with that then, what do you think is maybe a common trap that people fall into in the earliest stages when they start thinking about, I want to get more fit? What are the mistakes they make? Yeah.
That's a really, really good question.
Because I feel like that might be something that's not actually something they do. It's probably an error in the way they think.
Yeah, that is such a good question. Because on the one hand, part of me is like, fitness is at least starting out relatively simple, and I can give most people some like starting points and you will get some results. And yet there is an artistry and an intricacy to what I do as a coach where I'm like, man, it's going to be really hard for you to make the kind of results you want without overcoming the ignorance that you have, which either means you need to go and immerse yourself in fitness information, which is sort of time consuming, or you pay for a coach, which sounds like a sell, but it's like coaches exist for a reason, because I'm going to condense information and like streamline the process for you. Okay, so what are the big... Ask the question again.
Main mistakes or traps that people fall into early on?
Main mistakes or traps? I think probably the biggest one is believing, and I get this as a highly emotionally volatile person, just by nature. I'm very high in neuroticism, which is not great. The biggest trap is probably that you need motivation to do X. You need to feel like it to do X. So for my own life and for my clients, I've started to change this resistance into the motivation itself, by way of part of the process, part of the benefit we're trying to attain comes from doing shit when we don't want to do it. Yeah. I'm not amazing at this yet. I tried making content like 3 days in a row this week and I got one piece of content out. It's a thing. But you can turn the negative into part of the positive, because a lot of guys don't want to be subject to their emotions and their whims quite so much. Yeah. It's like, cool, the kind of guy you want to be probably is the kind of guy who can grit and bear and do the thing when you don't feel like it. So you don't need motivation. If you can commit to the action, you'll find the motivation comes. Which
is a good sort of segue to what we talked about last week.
Which is something we've talked about. Yeah, exactly. So that's a massive trap. Another really practical or like real world trap that people fall into is if you have an ache or a pain, I've got a really bad lower back, I've got a bad shoulder. Like I get it, especially when so many practitioners out there, like physios and stuff. There are a lot of really dog shit physios. There just is. I have a number of friends who are physios. They're aware of it. It's the same with chiros. It's the same with PTs. The vast majority of them, in my opinion, are shit. The reason I mention that is you've got someone who's got back pain and they're like, I'm scared to exercise. The way my physio or my chiro has talked about my back is it's really fragile. Now they're scared of using their back, which is not evidence-based. That might be a whole other episode. You might be able to get in one of the physios I know as like a guest, which would be really awesome actually. But people are afraid of using their back, for example, shoulder, whatever. And it's like exercise is the thing that will actually get your back free of pain. You just need to learn how to find the right dose with it. Yeah. So if people are listening to this and you are battling that and you're like, I want help with that, because I will end up making this episode way too long if I go into it, but that might be one we go into in the future. It's like pain science, and yeah, but that's another big one. And people just sort of sit in their ass and out of fear do nothing. Another one is believing that you do not have the time or the energy. It's one of these things where you sort of have to slingshot yourself. You got to dig a bit deeper into a pit to come out the other side. So you have to do things in the short term that are temporarily going to make you more tired because you're injecting more energy into learning how to prep your meals, train properly, make the time, go and actually do the training, feel sore and tired from that. There's a temporary bit where you dip down and then you shoot out the other side where you're like, I feel tremendously better. But it can be such a trap for people within, the first 4 weeks can be sort of tough. And they're like, I'm here to get more energy. Instead, I feel worse.
That's interesting, actually, because my sort of personal experience with it, my trainings, I've always had a baseline sort of level of fitness that I've never dipped below, I think, just because of the way I grew up. I was always doing a certain amount of physical activity.
Sure.
But I always fluctuate between doing a little bit above that and then back down to it. And it fluctuates a lot. But what I've always found is the first 2-3 weeks is actually the easiest period for me. I think because it's the novelty of like, all right, I'm back into it. I've got this mad program that I'm trying out. The meal prep stuff is just, it's new. There's novelty to it. Sure. That makes it really. But then after that period is I hit this kind of wall where I'm like, oh, fuck, okay. It's real now. Now it's getting difficult. Yeah, I've actually recently hit that. And yeah,
Did that call me?
oh, nice. Well, this is the chat. Now I'm using this as my way to get out.
Well, that might be fun. Let's sort of troubleshoot your stuff now and make it really practical.
Okay. All right.
Like that's why I was saying this can be such a good question, but it can be so difficult to answer because you're a different kettle of fish where you start strong and then you sort of fall off, come back, start strong, fall off. You're the yo-yoer, which a lot of people are as well. So yeah, there's a whole other camp of people who start with really high energy and then like hit a wall and they're like, nah, for a variety of reasons. So yeah, we can go off script. I'm curious, like just tell me about what's going on.
Well, what I've found is, last year I started using Mike Israel's app.
RP app, yeah.
Because I really like seeing detailed progression. That really helps me. If I can see numbers going up,
Helps most people, yeah.
gamifying it works so well for me. I think for me, it comes to, I can see all the benefits when I'm training consistently, right? If I typically train in the morning before I go to work. It's rough getting there. After I've been there for about 10 minutes, things start flowing. It's feeling really good. The drive to work afterwards, I feel mad.
Yeah,
the whole first half of the day, I'm fresh. I'm like creatively, I'm just sharp. If I don't train in the mornings, I feel like shit. I slow like you.
Yeah.
So that's actually something I wanted to say before. We talked about not having or feeling you need the energy or the motivation to train. You actually get more energy from training in a weird way.
Yes.
Systemic fatigue is a thing and all of that, but the how would you say, I guess the functional benefits or the cognitive benefits of training, that's a massive upside for me.
Yeah.
Mood and all the rest of it. But despite knowing that, I always find myself wrestling to actually get into the gym after a couple of weeks. It's like, oh, fuck, okay, it's 4:30 in the morning. I do not want to get up. I do not want to. And then after work, I'm just too zapped. It's much harder to convince myself to train. So I think for me, it's...
How many days a week are you training? When you are training?
I'd say between 5 and 6. I find if I break too much momentum, I struggle to get started again. So I don't like to take too much time off between training. It might not be every day is as intense as the day before, but I still like to keep the habit there because if I stop, it's just hard to get the ball rolling.
How long are the sessions?
I'd say between 45 to an hour. Some maybe a little bit longer, some a bit less.
Okay.
Really quick, my mind automatically goes towards... Because there's lots of different ways to skin it. I agree, people who sort of get their Monday to Friday routine, and because you don't have any other obligations in terms of like you work and then your obligation is to you. It's just PJ lives PJ's life, which is great. Monday to Friday can work really, really well for you. What might work, if energy is a legitimate thing and you just like, you wake up and you're like, I'm hitting a wall of, it's 4:30 in the morning, I'm genuinely really tired. Like that's a real factor. How much of that is like, this is what you get into with coaching is like, how are we managing stress? What's the sleep quality and quantity actually like? So sometimes, I don't know what yours is like, but sometimes some young people, like, they stay up a little bit later than they should, and they burn the wick at both ends. They get up early, and nutrition could also be a factor. You may not be fueling the way that you sort of really
I
need
think
to.
that is actually my biggest thing, right? Because I don't think I'm actually that fatigued. I think I'm just being a bitch most of the time. But
If it's genuine fatigue, it's genuine fatigue. There's an element where, yeah, you have to suck it up, but there's also a reality of when you're tired, you're tired. So yeah, I would look at teasing out how much of it is. I try and figure out percentages, not actual percentages, but like, all right, how much of his fatigue is PJ needs a bit of a mindset kick in the butt, and how much of it is in conjunction with the mindset kick, working out other factors, variables in your life to make it easier. Another one might be, dude, let's just commit to 5 days a week of 30 to 40 minute sessions and teach you how to be a bit more efficient, more bang for your buck. The RP app, I'm sure, is fantastic, but there's many ways to program to get a similar result. So if I was programming for you, if we're doing 5 days a week, that could be 2 lower body days, which I would probably put on Monday, Thursday. I would do upper body push Tuesday, upper body pull Wednesday, a hybrid upper body push pull on Friday, to spread things out really nicely. Monday being more quad focused, Thursday being more back and hammy focused. Real simple. It's like a push pull leg spread across 5 days sort of split. And your press day could be like you go in and do 3, maybe 4 sets of heavy bench with a moderate sort of rest break. Dive into some dips, maybe some assisted dips, and we could do them as a drop set. We could do them as you could do it as a myo matching. It's probably too fatiguing. Anyway, I'm going down the autistic route of actually overthinking the hell out of this. But you could do like your big prime movement at the start where you have a big rest, and then do another calisthenic or lighter chest movement. It could be chest fly, machine chest press, even dumbbells, shorter rest time, just we're going more for the burn. And then finish it off with some isolation. You could do a superset of tricep pushdowns with dumbbell lateral raise. And you want to throw some crunches in there at the end or something for a little 10-minute circuit. You're in and out in 30, 35 minutes. And by the end of that, you'll be like, hot damn, that was a fantastic push session. Same thing on the next day. Do your chin-ups, pull-downs, rows, whatever. Anyway, I would get you focusing Monday to Friday with a program that's a little bit more efficient time-wise, and really get you to focus for 90 days of just showing up no matter what.
yeah, that's my issue at the moment, which I've locked in time this weekend to look at my program and rearrange it a bit, because I hate training legs. I fucking hate training legs. It's a mission for me. So my leg days are very short, but then I have, like, my Friday session, for example, it's too long. It's too much. So I need to rearrange. And so it's what I actually find. I didn't mean for this episode to be like a prescription for me, but anyway.
No, it's totally useful to people to think outside the box, because everyone thinks, especially if you're trying to build muscle, they think very narrowly. Yeah, I'm like, there's actually a pretty broad way of approaching this.
Yeah, this is actually something I want to lead into in a little bit, but I'll make this point first. I actually find when I'm at the gym, it's not that if I can get there, I'm sweet. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll generally finish everything I've mapped out for that session, because I just hate seeing it unfinished. Yeah. Some days, if I've got a bit of a funny shoulder at the moment, so if that's playing up, I'm like, I'm not going to push any extra today. I'm just going to stop. But generally, if pain isn't an issue, I'm finishing the session. It's getting there. And I feel like that's a big thing that people might wrestle with in the beginning, is knowing that it's a benefit, but that the objective benefit of it isn't enough to convince them to actually get into the gym. I find that even though, I could train for 3 weeks straight, but feeling great, knowing that it's benefiting me, and if I stop, I'm going to feel like shit. Yes, to stop.
Yeah, this is why, this is one of the best elements of having coaching, because you have some form of accountability. But obviously one of the core things of coaching is we're trying to figure out what carrot on the stick we're going for at that moment. There's always a goal. There's always something that we're training specifically for these adaptations. It's why I've had people say to me, dude, you would rake in so much money if you went and did some boot camps, did some group coaching sessions, I don't think I can deliver the quality and get the kind of results I want through those methods because I can't give people the one-on-one attention. So when you can really be clear on this is what I'm training for, you really quickly understand why the consistency matters. So if you're chasing a 100 kilo bench for reps, it's like, okay, the bulk of your pressing work in the week is going to be shaped around that goal. And when you start to understand that you need a certain amount of stimulus within a 7-day period, give or take, you need a certain amount of sets completed at a certain amount of intensity, and the body doesn't really like spending energy on building muscle. So if you don't use it, you will lose it. And you need to keep the stimulus fairly consistent so that the muscle's like, oh, got to get a bit bigger, got to get a bit bigger. Otherwise it gets a little bit bigger and goes, oh, no stimulus, I'm going to go back down a little. And you sort of that's where you end up in the yo-yo. When you start to understand that in relation to your goal, the consistency is easier, or the drive to show up, because you realize I'm not going to get to this goal if I don't follow the structure. So that's what works a lot for, like, a lot of the time if I've got clients that are starting to stall, 9 times out of 10, it's, dude, you've been inconsistent.
This is actually a question I have for you then, because what I expected you to say when I asked what are the common mistakes or whatever in the early stages, I thought goal setting was going to be in there. And I feel like, yeah, it has to be, right? Because for me, I've fallen down the trap. I've never been into powerlifting, or I've always been once I stopped consistently training martial arts, it went to just aesthetics. I just want to get bigger. Yeah. Didn't do it a very effective way. I just injured myself more often than not.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I know for me now, the pure aesthetic goal, just trying to get swole, it's not enough. That's not a clear enough goal for me to stay consistent.
Yeah.
So I actually want to dedicate a whole episode to like the process of effective goal setting, because it's come up a lot for me this year. But
yeah,
how do you sort of, what would you say to someone who's maybe setting a not kind of great goal? If aesthetics is the only thing they're talking about, what's the conversation you would have with someone around that?
Goal setting is a really interesting topic. It's something, the next episode I might go into with myself, because I've been, thinking a lot about that the last few weeks for myself. Like, it's still something I'm figuring out.
I've had so many conversations about it this year. That's why I'd like to explore it a bit. But let's look at it from like purely like if someone's having a discovery call with you, they're interested in training. So what's
So first of all, you need to get away from being vague. Someone's like, oh, I want to get fit. It's like the analogy I always go to is, I'm like, cool, what does fitness mean to you? Because an Olympic swimmer is not fit for Olympic weightlifting. Yeah. I may have said that one before. I say it all the time. And vice versa. They're both physically fit, physically competent, healthy individuals.
Very specialized, right?
But fitness is also relative to a goal. Yeah. So you need to tell me, what does fitness mean to you? I want to keep up with the kids, or I want to be able to play footy with my mates, and rah. And then you what I like to do is I really like to dig. I want to see where the emotions are underneath. Yeah. Right? I get crass with this, but it means something. Part of what my notes were about, I was going to go through like an apologetic of why men should be fit to begin with. I think men really should be fit, as close as I can to give someone a moral obligation to be fit. But you dig a bit deeper, and guys are like, I want to look down and actually be able to see my dick again, for the overweight guys. I get tired having sex. I don't want to get tired having, like that. That's a big one. That's like the one place you want to feel like you are the man, right? I want to be able to keep up with the guys. There was a guy, I was at jiu-jitsu yesterday. I was rolling with a new guy who's rocked up. Lovely dude. I think he's like Lebanese or something. I always get along with Lebanese guys, the way they call you bruv and cuz, and I love it. It's great. This guy was clearly juiced to the tits. Just look, I'm like, you are juiced to the tits. But, and he's strong, but he just like gassed out really easily. So he's clearly had a goal of wanting to get really big and strong for his own reasons. Now his goals, I'm watching him in the process of Like while we were rolling, he just rolled onto the floor at one point. He was like, "This is like my second session, and I'm dead. Like I can't breathe anymore."
So I fall.
Goals are shifting.
I have trained a lot with one of my older brothers, right? And we're very different in the way we approach training. He's naturally quite buff and just strong. He always has been.
Right.
But crazy gas tank. And last year, I remember we were training, and I think we might have been on the treadmill or something. We were doing like a, on-off, what do you call, like Tabata sort of style.
Right.
We jumped onto the treadmill, and we were both wearing heart rate monitors, and his heart rate was just low. It wasn't moving. Mine, resting, was so high. And I'm like, this is not fucking normal. Like, he's a lot older than me. Sorry, bro, you're old. But just, I was like, what the fuck is this? And that scared me, because I'm like, okay, I got to change up my approach to training. Now I need to think about this in a more intentional way. And that comes back to really kind of defining what the goal is, I guess, because for me, I was just like, I want to look good. Well, really, it doesn't take that much effort to look better than the average person now, I think, because most people are in not great shape.
Yeah.
So the bar's not that high. But being healthy, genuinely healthy, and actually fit in the way you described it, that's something that I think is much more difficult to get to.
Yeah, and that's why you have to go back to the emotional reasons for the goal that you've got. Yep. Like I've had a goal for over 10 years. I say I've had a goal. I would love to learn piano one day. But the reason I don't really act on it, one, I am working at not being on screens as much. I probably could have taught myself in the time that I waste. But out of all the other things, I'm learning business, and I'm trying to really put a lot more time and energy into my children and being a better dad, and my own like getting out and being social. Again, episode 6, we might get into this, but it's just like a lower priority. Yeah. And the emotional reason to work on, I'm like, would me learning how to play piano right now really positively impact my quality of life? No. So it'd be cool if I could just matrix download that skill into my brain, and that'd be sick, but it's just not important enough. Yeah. So when I go through goals, okay, now my brain's found a groove. When I go through goal setting with people, you need to find the emotional core, because it's like doing this is going to be hard to make it consistent, to get you to actually show up and perform. That's one of the hardest sells about fitness is you have to do something for delayed gratification. It's going to kind of suck, right? But you have to get to the emotion to help them remind themselves why they should care. So I very quickly have a quick example. Yep. I got a new client last week, and I really try and kickstart my guys in the first sort of 2 to 3 weeks. That period really matters. Like your onboarding and how you start people with the right energy and expectations, I've learnt matters tremendously as a coach. Yep. Pro tip. Now I've had 5 people sign up in the last few weeks. Almost all of them have like hit the ground running. One guy has stumbled in his first few days. Didn't log his food over the weekend, wasn't using the trackers that I'd given him, wasn't really communicating. And we got to the check-in. He did do his check-in, and I sort of called him out on it. I can't remember how I said it nicer, but it was essentially a black and white, like, this is not a good sign. Starting this way. And he's like, I fell off the wagon, I binge ate. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. If you binge ate, put it in the food log. That's actually okay. I want to see it so I can deal with it. If you're going to hide things from me. And then we got on a phone call, because at the same time I try and marry that up. Like I try and imagine I've got my arm around my client, and I give them 2 pats on the back and a slap on the back of the head. Yeah, and he's explaining to me sort of where he's at emotionally and the stuff he's got going on in his world. And I went back to the emotional core of like, I understand all that, but also remember when you came to see me, you want to be a better husband. You want to be a better role model for your kids. You're sick of being the guy. He hasn't even told his wife he's doing this program yet, because he's like, I'm so sick of being the guy who says I'm going to make a change and I don't. So this time I'm going to shut up and I'm going to do less talky and more walky. And like, once again, I've got goosebumps saying that, because that's the shit that really matters to me. But yeah, you got to go back to even saying that. Hopefully at least one viewer can feel that resonate of like, that's way more motivating of like, I'm not acting in accordance with the man that I want to be. That matters so much more than, do my pecs look good? Who gives a shit? Vast majority of people don't care. So I don't know if that helps, but
No, that's perfect, man, because I think the goal setting thing, I think, is a huge thing to get very clear on.
Yeah.
So you actually had a post I saw maybe a couple weeks ago now where you said men have an obligation to be fit. I want you to go into that a little bit because I really liked that post, and it kind of goes back to something that I was saying in an early episode where I think you have I do view it as a sort of moral obligation that you should reach your maximum potential in whatever domain that is. And yeah, I'll leap back to that episode because there's a lot we've unpacked in that, but I want to dive into the physical competence side of it because I think that's huge. I liked that post. I want you to unpack that a bit.
Cool. I will try and be succinct with it. So there's a couple of layers to this. I want you to imagine like a diagram that's like a dartboard. Like you've got the middle, and then you got another ring, a bit wider ring. Like I've got levels to how I sort of look at this. And I realize the word should and ought, like this is what someone absolutely must do, is quite strong. This is my view on fitness is as close to a should and an ought as you can possibly get to. One of the primary reasons, so one of the outer circles we're sort of looking at, I think, on a societal level, your obligation to your fellow man, which is something that Western culture, I feel like to a degree, has sort of lost, which I think is a real shame. It's very individualized, very me. But, you know, people will say, what such and such is doing doesn't hurt anybody. I'm like, if you break it down, if more people engage in that particular behavior on a societal level and it becomes more systemic, yes, there will be systemic issues that affect everyone. So yes, it does hurt people. I digress. But one of those examples is, according to the Australian Institute of Health 2024 report, the AIHW, I'm going through my notes here. Okay, so in 2018 to 2019, Australia spent approximately $24 billion on potentially preventable lifestyle-related disease. Over 8 billion was tobacco and obesity related. And just imagine if that money, imagine if that money went to infrastructure or homelessness or education or fucking anything else, right? I'm not saying we don't give medical care to people who need it. I'm just saying, like, preventable, like that amount of money. Like this is exactly what I was talking about. It's like your obesity. If you want to live that way, for just picking on obesity, if you want to live that way, because there are some people who are like, they're proud almost of being fat. Cool. Yeah, you say it doesn't affect you, but it does when there are enough of you draining the resources of everyone else.
Yeah.
If we adopted that same mentality towards you, we would cut off your funding because you're taking taxpayer dollars for something that you have. And I work with obese people. I know the psychology. I know the physiology gets more complex than this. This is sort of, on the one hand, if you're not going to take action on it, you're not going to get the support. See what your life feels like then. On the other hand, yes, I realize it's complicated and there's emotions and we got to deal with that. The report also said over 1/3, so 36% of the total burden of disease in Australia in 2024 could have been prevented by reducing exposure to all the modifiable risk factors. Modifiable risk factors included in the Australian Burden of Disease Study 2024. So over 1/3, 36% of the total burden of disease in Australia, 36% of it likely avoidable. 36%. And it makes the case, I like that it actually says this. This shows to me that it was quite thorough. This estimate has taken into account the complex pathways and interactions between diseases and risk factors. That's really, really helpful and really pointed, because someone can come back and say, well, 36% might be an overestimation because there are complex factors. Like, no, they've taken into account the complex pathways of disease and they've still come out at 36% is preventable. So on a societal level, like, you being fit reduces the burden that you bring to your broader man. And as I've been reading Adler, individual psychology and stoicism, I quite like And I do also believe that Western culture was built on Judeo-Christian ethics. I do like the appeal in all of those systems of thought. You have a responsibility to your fellow man. I don't think that's bad. I think that's good. So broader societal level. Then you've got just your broad network, socially, friends, colleagues. I think you are more useful. If you are physically fit, you're likely to be more productive in the workplace. You've just got higher energy levels. You're able to, fitter people, the beauty bias, it is what it is. They are more likely to be promoted and to be accepted for a position. Obviously, there are multi-variables when you're hiring someone, but assuming you have the same skill set, someone who's fitter can get hired more preferentially because their body reflects a degree of character, of discipline, those sorts of things. So you can be more useful generally to your broader man in your friendship circles. Again, like moving house, something like that. I've helped people move house, and it's obvious when there are other guys there and it takes 3 of them to lift a table or a washing machine. You're like, I can just lift the thing on my own. Or it's not a really big slog to get the awkward washing machine and the bigger bits of furniture out of the truck. Yeah. Because it's really just not that bad for you and one other guy to move it. Whereas for the other guys who do nothing all day, it takes 4 of them and they're struggling. You're just more useful. And the more useful you are to other people, the more valuable you are and the more appreciated you are. And unfortunately, the reality for men is we are primarily valued by what we provide. That just be how it be. And then shrinking it a bit more to your family, fitter, stronger guys. I mean, hopefully it never comes to it, but you just have statistically probably a better chance of defending your family if you've got some muscle and strength.
Or not getting into those situations at all, right? Because if you look physically competent to a point, that's going to diffuse a lot of situations.
You get more respect. Yeah. That was the coolest thing about. I'm not amazing at jiu-jitsu. Honest to God, I'm not. I'm really so bad in lots of ways. But like my saving grace when rolling with people with more technical skill is I'm stronger than a chunk of the guys, and you can feel it. Yeah, and then in your relationship, I think you being generally fitter is good. Just intimacy and provision and protection. And then for yourself is mental health. Honestly, I know I can talk a lot, but I could go on. Like there's all these layers to why I think a man, if you have the capacity to be fit and to improve your fitness in some component, I really think you should.
I guess one way to think of it too is like, you just rattled off probably the tip of the iceberg of the benefits. Give me a downside.
Well, that's just it. You could make the argument of the downside taken to extremes, but this is with anything, right? Risk of injury, possibly. I would argue if you go into your like over 50, even over 40 years in life and you're not particularly fit, your risk of injury bending over doing up your shoelaces, or the amount of guys I've met who are like, I put my back out picking up my child. Are you kidding? Like, again, on the one hand, I get it. On the other hand, I'm like, for real? Other potential downsides. I mean, one of the things that pisses me off about Instagram gym culture is the vanity aspect, the body dysmorphia, the mental health thing is real. I try and balance that out with sort of the content that I make and the things I talk about. So there are downsides when it's taken to its toxic degree. There absolutely are.
Anything, right?
But they're not reason enough to not to do the thing.
I feel like you would very quickly be able to narrow down the potential downsides very quickly.
Yeah.
The upsides, though, it's like...
Yeah, I'm talking to the guys who aren't doing anything or the guys who are inconsistent. Yeah. And just a fan of like, if most men were lifting weights 3 times a week, sort of whole body session, something like that, 3 times a week, cleaned up their eating, worked on their sleep and their stress, and went for more walks, did a little bit of a jog, picked up a martial art, and just incorporated those relatively straight. Once they're ingrained in your lifestyle, they're not that hard to be consistent with. Yeah. Once they're ingrained. Yeah. The difference to your quality of life is astounding.
There's an interesting study that I've seen where people looked at the top CEOs I think this was an American study, but on average, yeah, it was American. On average, Fortune 500 CEOs dedicated about 4.5 hours per week to exercise. So if you divide that over a week, that's not that much exercise, right? Like, you don't have to do that much.
Doesn't take much.
Like, and you're getting the benefits of being more, everything you just mentioned there, but even just a simple one of being more productive at work.
Yes.
Like, I know
Cognitive benefits are huge, yeah.
dude, I know it for myself 100%. I know that I'm more creative and productive early in the morning. I do all of my most cognitive demanding tasks in the early morning.
Yeah.
If I train before work, I'm sharp. I know that I'm going to be good.
Yeah.
If I don't train, it takes me so long to sort of get into a groove.
To be clear, not everyone is like that. Some people prefer training in the evening and they're fine at work. But in a general sense, you being fitter, regardless of when you train, you being just a fitter human being at rest is still a huge net positive to all things cognitive. But yes, there are some people who, if they train in the morning, they just feel like the rest of the day really clicks, which is great. That's, if you identify you're one of those people, that's excellent.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing too, of just being able to work out, like, where does it fit into your routine to give you the maximum benefit?
Yeah.
So, like, I know for me, if I do that early morning session, it'll have those benefits. If for whatever reason I miss, I try to go after work. I just know that I'm getting now it's just a purely physical thing. I'm just getting there to get the work done.
Yeah.
So I think getting to know, I guess, the way that you function as an individual and being like, oh, this is where I need to slot that practice in to get the most benefits, I think is important.
Yep.
Martial arts is one that I'm always biased towards. I think everyone should be involved in martial arts. But okay, I guess something that I would like to maybe wrap this one on, and I actually see this as being a little fitness series that we do. I think there's a lot of follow-on episodes that we could do to.
Yeah. I personally just wanted to sort of do an introduction today, focusing on why I think guys should take this more seriously in their own life. But yeah, there's so much that could be said on it. Would really like to eventually get more into the practical stuff, but yeah, go on.
So with that being said, then, one thing you mentioned early on is looking at resources. There's heaps of shit online. There is just so much stuff on there. A lot of it a lot of the information contradicts itself. Give me a quick sort of, it could even be your coaching business, right? But what are some just entry-level resources that people should look at to get started?
Man, entry-level resources.
It might not even be necessarily, I recommend watching this dude or whatever. It could just be, what is something, maybe it's key principles that people should understand. One thing that I think is, it surprises me how many people don't understand what a calorie deficit is or how calories impact the body. That's one thing that I just don't get.
That's a whole other conversation. This is the trouble with my brain. It just does this like massive spider web. I'm trying to think of it's hard for me to keep things simple, which is why I struggle with short form content. The hardest part for a beginner is just not knowing if they're making progress, how to do X, Y, Z. Look, ultimately, especially because my niche is beginners, getting a coach that takes a lot of the guesswork out of how to be a beginner, oh my gosh, it makes a difference. That's why I like working with beginners. So yes, look, if you really are like, I want to get from A to B efficiently, I've got a little bit of money, I've got the drive, I want to learn, hit me up. Get a coach. I think apps, even like the RP app and stuff, I think they're good. There are some beginners who can just take off with that sort of thing.
I don't think that, from my experience with it, it's not super beginner friendly.
I would say a lot of my ex-clients, because a big part of my coaching philosophy is like, teach a man to fish, feed him for life. Don't just give a man a fish. A lot of my ex-clients could probably pick up that app and use it really, really well because they've got the foundation laid. Look, finding a good coach to start with, I honestly think makes a big difference. That's why even in the age of AI and apps and stuff, coaches, the industry is still growing because there's still a need for personalized, specific recommendations. So there is that. But look, that aside, beginner stuff. I'm sure RP's got some beginner stuff. I think people like Jeff Nippard, Sean Yaloway. I don't know how to say Sean's last name, but he's a great YouTube guy. They've got some really good beginner stuff. But for a complete beginner, I'd be like, look, start immersing yourself in fitness content. Maybe if you want me to, I can put in the description a bunch of names of people that I recommend people you can follow and start digging in. But if you can commit to like, okay, look, I'm going to try and go for X amount of walks per week, and I'm going to try and be in the gym 3 days a week. A great beginner split can be just 3 simple whole body sessions, sort of like a starting strength model, but not necessarily. It doesn't necessarily have to be like starting strength at all. It can be machines. I don't really give a shit. Or you could do a push-pull legs. Some people have only got 3 days in a row. If you do push-pull legs, that's a great way to do 3 days of training in a row without the muscles, the fatigue from one day really affecting another. You can't do three sessions of whole body training 3 days in a row. You can't do that, or I would advise against it. But look, for a complete beginner, just start. The cliche of 3 sets of 8 to 12, I often say 10 to 15, because there's less chance you're going to hurt yourself and you get more reps. The more reps you do, the more practice you get with the movement pattern. 3 sets, 10 to 15 reps, maybe even 8 to 12. Start with machines. Watch YouTube videos on how to squat, bench, do Romanian deadlifts at least. It doesn't have to be deadlifts, but Romanian deadlifts are really, really good muscle strength builders. And just focus on the compounds. Learn how to do an overhead press. Like, start there. I can't really get too much more generalized than that, because my brain works very much in specifics. But if you can at least start with, look, I've been going to the gym consistently 3 days a week. I'm not really making much progress, but you're at least laying a foundation. If and when you get a coach or when you find new information, it's much easier for you to implement that information because you've already got a good foundation. So start with the behavior. Even if you're not getting great results, start there. And as you learn more or find someone to work with, it does make it a lot smoother, a lot quicker.
Yeah, sweet. Now, something that I had a mate, we've sort of fallen out of touch, but he for a very long time struggled with body image stuff. He was quite overweight and really struggled with it, right?
Yeah.
And I remember him trying a bunch of times he wanted to get in better shape. He wanted to feel more confident. He kept having a crack at it and would fall off. But eventually what he ended up sort of falling into was his training got a little bit more consistent, and then he discovered powerlifting. He didn't know powerlifting was a thing, got into powerlifting, fell in love with it, now competes and is doing really well for himself.
Yeah.
It's great to see. But that was really cool to see because he didn't really, from the outside, probably didn't know much about that world, right?
Yeah.
Just through stumbling through it, just giving it a crack, ended up finding the thing that he loves, and now that's, I would guess, is a major passion of his. So I think what you're saying is just start, because you stumble through it enough, you'll eventually find the thing that goes, oh, maybe it's not lifting in the gym, maybe it is jiu-jitsu or fucking joining a run club, something like that. But just trying the thing, being directionally correct, right? You'll eventually stumble upon whatever that thing is that helps keep you consistent.
Yeah, and you prompted a really like a quick point I want to make in me. The structure is so important, right? So if you go too broad going in the gym, like, oh, I want to grow my chest, and don't watch the Instagram videos where they're like, go from bench press to dips to chest press to push-ups to pec deck. Like, holy shit, if you're a beginner, 1 to 3 chest exercises in a chest session is enough. Honest to God, it is enough. But like one of the things that's good about if you fall into powerlifting or dare I even say CrossFit or some other form of like lifting culture, it gives you structure. If you're powerlifting, you're not training like a bodybuilder. There will be bodybuilding elements to bring your pecs up, but it's for your bench to be. But it gives you a narrower framework to sort of, and that helps tremendously with consistency. So if you're starting out and you're like, I'm a complete beginner, I pay for Planet Fitness, the free weights, the dumbbells and the barbells scare me because I'm a completely beginner. Sweet. If you want to grow your chest, I always pick on chest to start with, go do machine chest press and learn how to do the machine fly. maybe a cable crossover, but honestly, those 2 exercises will probably be enough for the first little while. You can do them twice a week for all I care. And then watch videos and incrementally add in 1 or 2 more exercises. Learn how to use the Smith machine if you're at Planet Fitness. But you don't need 20 exercises. When you're starting out, 2 to 4. Yeah. You're good. You're good. Don't make it overcomplicated. Just show up and you'll probably find you can just make rep progress and then weight progress every few weeks and you're good. You're good. Just start there. Don't rock up and do zany different things every week. It'll screw you up. Do the same thing every week for at least a few weeks, few months. Yeah. Anyway, cool.
Dude, this was another great chat. I'm actually keen to do some follow-up episodes on this little fitness series. I think this could turn. Yeah, let's do it. There's a lot more to cover, I think, and we just hit the tip of the iceberg.
Yes. So yeah, I had to really control myself.
All right, sweet. Thanks, man.
Cool. Awesome. Cheers.